Hello. Thank you for listening. This is the near death experience of Anthony, and this experience occurred on September 12th, 1987. Open quote. I had just gone into my bedroom at 9:15 in the evening. I had turned my alarm on for the next morning and sat on the bed when I had a massive asthma attack. I fell back on the bed and tried to call out to my parents, but didn't have the breath. As the attack increased in severity, I found that I couldn't move. This part was entirely conscious. As I blacked out, I guess through lack of oxygen, I heard a voice in my ear. The tone and cadence of the voice was one of absolute caring and totally calm, which was in stark contrast to the panic I was feeling at not being able to breathe. The voice was not mine, and it told me not to worry. It was going to look after me, and I was to follow it. At this point, I left my body and was looking down on myself lying on the bed with my eyes open. I was now totally calm and unafraid. The voice told me it wanted to show me something, and I felt myself traveling very fast toward a light. As I went through the light, I found myself flying in another world. Everything in this other world was made of what I can only describe as liquid light. Everything was alive. The ground, the mountains, even the sky. The voice was still with me, and during this experience never left me. It told me that where I was, the real world, that I had a job to do whilst I was there. I alighted on the side of a bare earth mountain. There were no trees, grass, or rivers, etc. There was light everywhere, but no sun. The light seemed to come from within everything, even the air. On this mountain, about halfway up, was a large boulder. On the boulder was a glowing golden brick. I know how this must sound. The voice told me that I was to build a garden on the mountain and that every year a brick would appear on the top of the boulder, and with the bricks I was meant to build a path up the mountain from the base to the boulder. I was told to plant trees that appeared as acorns, etc., at the top of the mountain. I was there for a very long time, in which time the voice was always present. I never felt alone, and I never questioned why I was there. I was totally at peace, and feelings of absolute joy and unconditional love pervaded me the entire time. I knew that the voice was the most trustworthy person/thing in the universe. As the years passed, I watched the trees grow. The flowers and the grass I planted also grew. The color of the flowers weren't of any color I have ever seen. Like there was 20 different colors in the rainbow there. I couldn't describe them, as there's just no frame of reference to what they look like. I was taught a lot of things and was able to, for want of a better phrase, see into people's souls, and understood in an instant all the ramifications of all our actions on each other. That anger is born of pain or fear, and many other teachings about what I now think of as the human condition. Then I saw everyone on the planet interconnected on these lines, and a feeling of such overwhelming love and empathy went through me. I felt like my heart was going to explode. The last brick appeared on the boulder some 2,500 years after I had first arrived. I was aware of every year. This was not dreamlike. This was real time, if that makes any sense. The path now stretched from the base to the boulder, but over the years the boulder had gradually changed shape and now looked square, like some sort of altar. The trees I had initially planted had grown. The boughs and branches had arched, and the trunks thickened to form what I can only describe as a temple on top, at the top of the mountain. The voice told me that the first part of my job was finished, and I now had to set foot upon the path. I went to the bottom of the mountain and put a foot onto the path. At this point, the most searing, unbearable pain tore through me, but the voice told me not to step off the path. I asked what the pain was, as it wasn't physical. It felt like, and this again sounds bizarre, but it felt like a spiritual pain. The voice told me that it was the pain of the least sin I would commit against my own soul. It was conveyed to me that this didn't mean sin in any religious sense, but specifically it was the pain of the wound to my own soul that I myself would commit in my lifetime. I continued up the path, and each time I stepped onto another brick, the pain was worse than the one before, until nearing the top, I told the voice I couldn't finish. The voice was kind and patient and said that it was with me and that I would finish, but I needed to learn the lessons it was teaching. I got extremely angry at this point and asked why I had been brought here for all this time in order to experience such terrible pain. I continued to the end of the path with the encouragement and presence of what was now I understood to be some higher spiritual being. I reached the entrance to the tree temple, went inside, and saw the only other being I saw the entire time I was there. It had its back to me and was kneeling as though in prayer. I was angry again, and I rushed up to this figure saying that I now knew that everything was real, so why did I have to experience all the pain? The figure stood up and turned around, and it was indescribable, a being of perfection, of what I can only be described as made out of pure love. I knew that this was the source of the voice. I was dumbstruck after all that had happened and could only say, I can see you. The being touched me on my cheek gently and said simply, and now you know. It is time to go back now. I was also told that the garden I had created would exist there forever, and I would return there one day. As I walked with the being back out of the tree temple, I saw for the first time other people coming to the garden and sitting on the grass, looking at the flowers, talking and laughing. The being smiled and said, "See what you have accomplished here." I felt completely overwhelmed, but I was then immediately transported back into my body, which I immediately felt as being incredibly heavy and cloying and almost unnatural. The asthma attack had totally passed, and I checked the clock, which said 9:23 p.m. The entire experience taken about 8 minutes from my initial attack to being back. I've never reported this before, as I guess most people would say it was an hallucination. I can only say that it was more real than anything I have ever experienced in this world. End quote. Wow. I built a tree temple, and the path up the mountain, and it only took 2,500 years and 8 minutes. There are some questions here. Let's see if any of them have a lot of insight here that we haven't already gotten. Question: did you suddenly seem to understand everything? Answer: everything is of one. Everything is part of everything else on a more practical level. While I was there, any knowledge I wanted, I immediately knew. When I came back, a lot of this knowledge stayed with me. I knew the answers to things intuitively without having to study. I ended up taking philosophy at Oxford University. Question: did you come to a border or point of no return? I was told it was time to go back. I had reached an understanding that I had completed what I had been brought there to do. Question: did you have a change in your values and beliefs because of your experience? Answer: yes, I'm certainly not afraid of death, nor do I regard it as the end. I am very aware of my own actions and how I relate to others and the world in general. Question: do you have any psychic, non ordinary, or other special gifts after your experience that you did not have before the experience? Answer: yes, I have been visited by people as they died or just after they have died, including family members and friends of my family. This has happened both in experiences while asleep that are very different from dreams and consciously while awake. I know what that sounds like. I don't regard myself as being especially religious or indeed spiritual. Bizarre as this must sound after everything I've written above, I regard myself as being a rational, down to earth, and practical person. I don't buy into any new stuff, etc. But the experiences I have had and continue to have are, sometimes annoyingly, real in my experience. I make no claims as to their provability, but I have passed on messages for various people in the last 15 or so years. It doesn't happen often, and I certainly do not make any personal gain from it. Quite the opposite in some cases, as I have been ridiculed, understandably, I guess, on some occasions. Question: are there one or several parts of your experience that are especially meaningful or significant to you? Answer: I was so young when it happened that for a number of years afterwards, I looked on the future as being something to have to get through in order to get back there. I have come to an understanding and a peace with this in the last few years. The best thing is that I know that this is not all there is. End of story. And a good one it was. Thank you for listening.